Okay, I can confirm that we are now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Natasha. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4 o'clock by the iPhone, and welcome to today's Cabinet meeting. And for the purpose of the record of attendance, I confirm that the following members are present and participating in this remote meeting: Councillor Ronnie de Burgh, Councillor Alison Freer-Jones, Councillor Lee Higgins, Councillor Alan Pearson. We also have the following councillors participants in attendance. We have Councillors Cumbers, Lindloss and Councillor Evans. Any member participating by remote link who declares an interest in any item of business in terms which requires them to leave the room must ensure that they cannot be seen or heard during the agenda item. This shall be confirmed by Democratic Services. This member of staff will therefore confirm to the remote member when they may rejoin the meeting. Should any aspect of the conference link fail during this meeting, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the link can quickly be re-established. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of a link failure for individual members, the remote members will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure of the equipment. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the item, providing the meeting remains quorate. Should the meeting no longer be quorate, the meeting shall be adjourned and any remaining items of business will be deferred. If the individual member's link is successfully re-established, then the remote members will be deemed to have returned at the point of re-establishment. I would ask our members to please indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand using the raised hand tool on the Zoom. I will then invite each member in turn to make their contributions to the debate. Before proceeding to the votes, I will ensure that all members and officers have no further comments by confirming that no hands are raised. I will ask each member to indicate when asked whether they are voting for, against, or abstaining. This will be recorded by Democratic Services Officer who will confirm the outcome of the vote. Any member who has been absent for the debate on a particular item due to link failure must abstain from the vote on that item. So we move to the main agenda items. We have no apologies for absence. I'm very happy to move the minutes of the 14th of October and look for a seconder. Councillor Higgins seconds. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Councillor Pearson.
Yes, the interest as a county councillor for the Leicestershire CC. If anything comes up regarding that may be impact, then of course there'll be a conflict. Thank you.
Any other declarations of interest? Okay, I have a personal interest as a county councillor and in any items on the agenda, particularly obviously item 10, that does refer to Leicestershire County Council, but a personal interest. There's no items being referred from the scrutiny committee. So we move on to agenda item 5, which is the Housing Revenue Account Budget Monitoring, 1st of April to the 30th of September. And I invite Dawn Garton, Director for Corporate Services, to summarise the report.
Yes, thank you, Leader. The report sets out the latest position for the Housing Revenue Account for the second quarter with a forecast projected to the end of this financial year. You'll see in the report this is indicating that we'll have a 30,000 overspend overall at the end of the year end, whilst also maintaining the agreed working balance at £750,000. This would result in a reduced transfer to the council reserves at the year end, which is there to support expenditure and regeneration and development projects. You'll see that the detail is set out in the appendix with a summary at paragraph 4.2.2. The key reason for the overspend is the shortfall in income as a result of the withdrawal of the health and safety service charge, and also the higher level of voids than anticipated. But this has been reduced down to a lower level by a number of underspends in a number of areas, including employees, repairs and maintenance. I must highlight the risk as well that, of course, we've not factored into these figures any increasing bad debts that might arise due to COVID. And again, remind members that we've had no specific government support from the government in the form of grants to support the housing revenue account with regard to COVID. And we'll continue to push on that. And we do submit regular returns on the impact to the housing revenue account of COVID. So all we can do is remain hopeful that there might be some support forthcoming. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I now invite Ronnie de Burgh, portfolio holder for corporate finance and resources, to move the recommendations and provide any further introduction to the report.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Dawn. Members will recognise that this is the mid-year point of fiscal year, and as such, it's a very difficult time to call with any certainty. We're still in the grip of the COVID pandemic and can't afford to lose sight of potential for further challenges and the risk of increasing rent arrears as tenants affected with the struggle to pay the rent. Whilst we need to ensure we support those tenants who are very vulnerable during this difficult time, we also need to ensure that our debt management policies and practices are effectively deployed to ensure the HRA budget, or the HRA, remains financially stable. I know the government are doing a great deal to help. However, I find it disappointing that no specific support has been provided for those councils like us who have housing stock to manage. We can only hope that this position is remedied in the future. Leader, I move that the report and its recommendations at 2.1 are duly noted.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Burgh, and I'm very pleased to second the recommendation at 2.1 on page 12 of the agenda. Just note that only at 1.2, actually, the 30th of September, budget holders are projecting the forecast outturn for the HRA of an overspend of 30k, which, whilst maintaining a working balance at the agreed 750k, will result in a reduced regeneration and development reserve. I do know that. Members of the Cabinet, do you have any comments to make?
Sorry, I put my hand up, Joe. Sorry, the button didn't work again.
It's not sure. Okay. You have something to say then, Alan?
Yeah, no, just to reiterate that it's been a difficult time. From a voids point of view, we're at the stage where we've got some of the difficult properties that we need to sort out from of past years where a number of work wasn't done, and again that was many years ago. So I guess from our point of view, we're at the stage now where we're moving forward with our housing. We're moving forward with repairs and maintenance, and hopefully shortly we'll get to the stage where we have very few voids and we have a good turnover, and that will help hopefully the future balancing of the costs and income in the future. Thank you.
Okay, members.
Councillor Orson, with Councillor Higgins has his hand raised as well.
Oh, it's not showing on mine actually. Okay, Councillor Higgins, sorry about that, Lee.
No, that's okay, Joe. I'll probably take the Alan Pearson route next time, but no, the hand was up. No, just on this, as I noticed announced on the 12th of November that councils are invited to bid for £20,000 to tackle pandemic-related housing issues from the LGA. I don't know if the council is looking to do that. I think with this report, as Ronnie, Councillor de Burgh did say, it's probably a little bit too early to see the COVID impact specifically, because obviously there was a lot of furlough going on, unemployment is starting to rise, and the other lag economic indicators. So as Councillor de Burgh did say, we do have to keep being a robust on debt management here. But equally, I do think it, not just MBC, but partners, and there's been a great debate in regards to free school meals debate. But I know with Me and My Learning and the support that Aisha and her team have been doing, it is to put that tailored package around the individual as well. It's not just about a free school meal voucher. It is about giving them support of how to budget, how to manage their finances. For example, utility bills, rent and council tax. I think Melton is pretty much in a good place on that, but it's not the time to take the eye off the ball. And I do call on all partners to work together on that, because if we don't tailor around the individual, as Councillor Pearson said before, we will start to see other metrics going the wrong way.
Okay, Alison, you got anything to say? No. Okay, the recommendation has been moved by Councillor de Burgh and seconded by myself. I ask you all to indicate by the hands up motion, please. Your Councillor Higgins, Councillor de Burgh, Councillor Freer-Jones, Councillor Alan Pearson. Natasha, is that noted?
That's noted. Yes, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. Moving on to the capital programme, monitoring to 31st of October 2020. Invite Dawn Garton, Director for Corporate Services, to summarise the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So, yes, the report sets out the latest position against budget for all council funds with regards to the capital programme to the end of October 2020. The detailed position for each of the projects split between the general fund and the housing revenue account is set out in the appendices and summarised in paragraph 5.1. You'll note that with regard to the general fund, there's two projects where there will be slippage into 2021-22, and we've just started the budget process for that financial year, and we'll pick up those slippages as part of that process. With regard to the housing revenue account, an underspend is being forecast, which is largely due to the impact of COVID, but also as well the lack of stock condition information. The detail of those schemes that's particularly impacted is set out in the report, but members should be aware that there could be further slippage over that forecasted at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Councillor de Burgh, Portfolio Holder for Corporate Finance Resources. Move the recommendations, please, and move any further introductions.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, we're being asked to note the financial position of the capital programme as at the 30th of September here, and as Dawn has outlined on the chart on page 20, 5.1, you can see very clearly that the general fund, which was a modest programme in the first place, is forecasting considerable underspend against that, and the key area of HRA is also forecasting a considerable underspend. But of course, that's all to do with the COVID situation that we're in and restricting operations. I'm delighted to note that the progress is being made on the stock condition surveys that we've been looking for some time, and the housing database, which will enable more accurate reporting on progress in the future with regard to those things. Leader, I'm very happy to move that we duly note this report.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Burgh, and I'm very pleased to second your recommendation to move the report as well. I do notice on page 20 that the general expenses are forecasting underspent by £90,000, and there are two projects likely to slip. I think that's worth getting out to the public. One is Lake Terrace, an underspend of 60k. Work is to commence, but later on in the next financial year. And one of the election pledges, the rural pub relief, underspend of 30,000, and simply the works has been delayed to COVID-19, but will be completed in the 21-22, subject to the restrictions, of course. Members, I look to you for any further comments, please. I haven't got any hands up on this occasion. So, members, if you're ready to vote, I ask all those in favour of voting for the recommendation to raise your hands. Councillor Higgins, Councillor de Burgh, Councillor Freer-Jones and Councillor Pearson. I look to Natasha. Is that satisfactory, Natasha?
Yes, that was unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Olsen.
Thank you very, very much. We move on to the General Fund Q2 Budget Monitoring 2020-21. Again, I invite Dawn Darton, Director for Corporate Services, to summarise the report, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. So the report sets out the latest position against budget for the General Fund, both general and special expenses, including a forecast to the end of the financial year. It includes the impact on the Council's finances for the year, both from business as usual, but also responding to the COVID-19 crisis. So you'll see in the report that with regard to the general expenses, the forecast is for an underspend of around 100,000, and for special expenses, Melton Mowbray, 4,000. However, we will be looking at what might be an appropriate portion of COVID costs to charge to special expenses, so this may change the figures slightly. Forecast includes the estimated impact of COVID in terms of additional expenditure, but also estimated lost income reduced by the government grant, including the income support scheme. Also, we're working with the leisure operator and keeping an eye on the publicised leisure grant scheme that is being published as being available, so that when the details are out, we can make an application for that funding. There's also a number of outstanding new burdens grants funding that we're keeping an eye on, and that should improve the situation, taking into account any monies that we might need to use in responding to some of those new burdens. However, you should note that there could be further costs arising from any local lockdowns between now and the end of the year, but also as well as we respond to the current national lockdown. Forecasts also do not take into account any bad debts that might arise as we need to write off potentially council tax, business rates and other income streams such as property rentals. Whilst it is a really good news that we are forecasting a positive position at this point in time, it really should be noted that we've only achieved that position as a result of over £400,000 of savings that we have identified based on halting some work, delaying some work, and also holding vacancies to try and generate those savings. And that's been a tremendous achievement from working with the budget holders to get to that position. So it's not been without its challenges. If that were not the case and we had not found those savings, then any shortfall would need to be met from the council's already limited and stretched reserves. And that could impact on the council's future financial sustainability. So it is important to note what an achievement that's been. You'll see there's a lot of detail behind all the variances set out in the report at paragraph 4.4, which sets out not just those COVID variances, but as I said, also those business as usual ones as well. I also want to conclude by drawing your attention to the risk section, and particularly the overall strategic risk relating to the council's finances, and to remind members that this is the highest risk on the council's risk register and reflects the pressure that was already existed on the council's financial sustainability as a result of a number of years of austerity and cuts to government funding, but also exacerbated by the current COVID crisis and the uncertainty around what future funding might be coming from government to support not just COVID as we move forward, but also general business as usual as well, with the delay in the fair funding review. We have commenced the budget setting process for next financial year, and reports will flow into cabinet scrutiny and ultimately full council. There's still a lot of unknowns existing around setting that budget from, as I said, ongoing government support, and also as well the impact on debt collection for council tax and business rates, and when we can see income really return to those pre-COVID levels. So I think it's worth noting that setting a balanced budget for 2021-22 without significant additional government support will be extremely challenging, and there is a high risk that savings might have to be made as we meet this challenge. Against this background, any surplus that we're predicting for this year will be essential to mitigate those future years' financial challenges. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Now I invite Councillor Ronnie de Boer to move the recommendations 2-1 and provide any further introduction.
Thank you, Leader. We're truly in challenging times. I'm pleased to present this report to Cabinet because throughout its length, it clearly sets out the financial challenges Council has faced over the financial year or during this financial year. And it demonstrates just how well it, as a body, and officers as individual budget holders, have responded to the challenges that have been presented. Leader, an estimated underspend on the general fund for this financial year is a position I would not have dared to hope for when the crisis initially started. The position has only been possible due to the significant savings that have been identified in the year, as Dawn has already outlined, and supported from central government as well. We don't know the level to which our finances will be challenged further by debt or the level of ongoing support. We will have to provide to the community and business, or the support that we have to provide to the community and businesses. The impact on employment or further national and local lockdowns that may be necessary early next year. We just don't know where we're going. Looking forward, the government spending review for next year is due to be announced on the 25th of November. And even with that announcement, we're unlikely to fully know what support Melton is likely to get. I make no apology for saying it, and really to firm up on what Dawn said herself in terms of next year's budgeting, we can't overstate enough the level of financial challenges that we must expect to face as we start to form a budget for next financial year. All the financial risks that we will face alongside the many, as yet unknown, challenges that will be presented. Next year, there are numerous financial risks that we will need to manage within the funding available to us. I'm appealing to councillors and budget holders now. Next year is key. We need to be realistic when setting our budgets with regard to what is affordable. It's imperative that we all work together. Difficult choices will have to be made. There's no doubt about that. We need to be prepared for this and prepared to take difficult decisions and to work within the funding available to us. Otherwise, we will become financially unsustainable and we will fail to deliver against the set priorities or meet the obligations within the community. That's all I really have to say on the matter. I would like to move on the proposal at 2-1 that this report be noted at the forecast for the financial year end. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor de Boer. I'm very pleased to second 2-1 as well. I'm going to keep it very brief because, like I said, I think it's quite amazing actually to see where we are at this moment in time. You're absolutely right, Councillor de Boer. The high quality of the finance department, but also all the other departments feeding into that have to be congratulated. It's I think you said it's a position you would have imagined possible, but yeah, we're there. Have to say, Councillor de Boer, you are beginning to sound a bit like a farmer, though. You're saying it's okay now, but next year is going to be worse. But that's the farming phrase. But I have to say the prognosis doesn't look good. But we will face those challenges as of now. But like I say, let's live for the moment. We have done amazingly well when you think where we were looking at. Now I have Councillor Higgins with his hand up. Over to you,
Leader. Thank you, Councillor de Boer, for that excellent summing up. I noted that you chose the words appeal to councillors, and I think that is an important statement to how we look to set the budget, not just for next year, but in the future years. And as you rightly said, if we set the budget slightly wrong, it will impact further down the line. I'm looking at page, in my pack, page 32 and 33, which is 4.4, which outlines the main variances with the figures as follows. And thankfully that the government did say that it would compensate the council and councils for some of the shortfall. I do note that it is not necessarily 100% compensation. I'll just talk on 2 points, and I know we've talked about this in Cabinet before, but for those who are watching and the members of the public, as you know, Councillor de Burgh, is we have looked at how we can support the community, and one of the things where either some councillors have talked about or chosen to raise is car parking. But I do note that that line is actually the largest shortfall because of the lack of income of £457,000, which is huge to this council. I mean, I know the answer, but just for the people watching, if we had decided to give the car parking away and made it, continue to make it free, how would that have impacted this outlook on the budget and potentially setting it in the future? Because as I understand, the government would not be compensating us for £314,000 had we done that. And obviously that happens on all the other line items. And I think going back to what you said, we need to appeal to councillors to how, if you are looking to give something away, where else do we cut? Thank you. It's a question to you.
Thank you very much. No one else is indicating they want to speak. I'm good. To be fair, there's no need to vote actually when it's only going to be noted, but even so, it's my style to vote on all these things. So I do move to the vote. All in favour.
Sorry, Leader. I did raise a question to the portfolio holder.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I was reading the papers. My fault. Sorry, Councillor de Burgh.
I'm sorry, Lee, I missed that one. Could you reiterate it, please?
Okay, yes. It's either for you yourself or Dawn. Though we've discussed it before at Cabinet, for example, if we had decided to give any service away for free or to reduce the charge, as I understand, the government would not compensate this council. And am I right in saying that through that we would be setting a very different picture today and the budget for the future?
Without doubt, because we would be that much short in the money, the finance that we had available. I think your question related to the proposal to change, to stop when we reintroduced car parking charges, whatever month it was. I think there was a suggestion that we shouldn't be doing so, and I believe the feeling was, and the understanding was, that if we had gone back on it at that point, then we would have lost the benefit of funding that we actually got from the government, i.e. that £314,000. Dawn, you may probably like to come in on that one.
Yeah, the portfolio holder, Councillor de Burgh's correct. We would have been 314,000 short. But of course, we need to see how much we lose again through this new national 1 month lockdown. And I'm sure, you know, that shortfall will be even higher, and our claim for the income compensation higher as well. And that money would have had to have been drawn from the reserves. And we wouldn't be sitting here talking about a forecast underspend. We'd have been talking about a forecast overspend, and then would have been drawing on those reserves.
And also the principle of inviting people into town wouldn't have been good at that particular time either, with the virus as it was. I have Councillor Pearson, who has found his hand facility at long last.
Did it work? Well, I didn't think it was working. Look, I just quickly, Councillor Higgins, Lee is quite right. My point I'm going to make is that we need to look at what position today government and information regarding cars that by 2013 carbon emission, they're trying to ban all diesels and petrol. More people in science, I've read an article today, a lot of companies now saying we want you to work from home, both environmentally, cost, and because of the impact, and people are looking at new ways to work. That means people are less likely to go shopping at lunchtime and park in their vehicles. I understand that we've got reliant on parking, but that will not last. So what I suggest is that we do need to look at very quickly new ways of raising funds when parking will not be necessarily raising the funds that we require in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving to the vote, if you could raise your hands, including you, Councillor Pearson, by the remote if possible. I have Councillor Pearson with a raised hand, Councillor Higgins, Councillor de Burgh, where's Alison, and Councillor Fair-Jones. Natasha, is that all noted?
Yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, it does seem to be dominated by finance, but having said that, the council's only as good as strong finance, of course. But mid-year Treasury Management Report 2021. I invite Dawn Garden, Director for Corporate Services, to summarise the report, please.
Thank you, Leader. So as you say, the last in this suite of mid-year financial reports. So this time the mid-year report on the Treasury Management activities, and this will be going to Council in December and is brought to Cabinet for scrutiny prior to going to that meeting. So as well as setting out the revised position for the current financial year against a range of indicators, the report also provides an update on the economic position from our Treasury Management advisors. The key impact on Treasury Management from COVID, of course, has been the reduction in the base rate, and then that's had the subsequent impact in terms of the investment returns against budget for the Council. And probably just following on from the last report, of course, that loss of income is not covered by the income compensation scheme. So we stand all of that loss. This has also impacted on the Council's property fund, which has seen a reduction in value over the 2 financial years of over £140,000. Now, whilst this is currently just a notional book loss, we don't have to realise that at this stage. There is a risk that if this does not recover, then we will have to actually realise that loss in the future. And as you may be aware, in order to mitigate that, the Council set a reserve fund up in a couple of years ago, recognising that future risk. And interesting at that time, who could have foreseen that, you know, just such a circumstance would happen. Members are also asked to note the proposals that are currently being developed by officers regarding investment in property to provide temporary accommodation. And should this be approved by members going forward, then you need to know that this would be funded by borrowing, and that's recognised in the report as well. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I move to Councillor Ronnie de Burgh, Portfolio Holder for Corporate Finance Resources, to move the recommendations and provide any further introductions to the report.
Thank you, Leader. This is usually my favourite report because it always is so buoyant, usually, or it has been over recent years. And it's difficult when you suddenly find a downturn in the market, things aren't coming in as before. It's truly been a difficult time for Treasury Management activities, with Brexit and COVID, as Dawn said, which has impacted on all the investment rates and returns. The impact on the Council's property fund is disappointing to see, but we must remember the fund has performed well for us in the past, and hopefully it will start to recover as we come out of the crisis next year, or when we do. Should that not be the case, as Dawn said, again, it demonstrates the prudence of the money set aside as part of the 2021 budget to mitigate this risk, and we're getting a payback quite quickly, which is quite good. I'm delighted to note that the recognition of the potential for borrowing to invest in the purchase of property to provide temporary accommodation for those most in need. This demonstrates the progress in terms of the Council's priorities in terms of housing. It's not just a case of providing the temporary accommodation, of course, it'll additionally free up resources to help us sustain other services that we provide to the community. Leader, I'm happy to propose the acceptance of the recommendations in this report at 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3. 2.1 to be noted, 2.2 the mid-year position, prudential indicators to be approved, and at 2.3 that the potential for borrowing to be undertaken initially as outlined in paragraph 4.8.1 from internal borrowing also be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie. I'm very happy to move the recommendations to 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. I'm pleased to hear you say it's your favourite finance report of the year. And as Dawn will certainly know, I have to say this every time. It always reminds me of a former leader at this time of year, Matthew O'Callaghan, who just used to love this report. and he used to wax lyrical into party manifesto of the Labour Party at that time, and boy did he enjoy it, and did he milk it for everything possibly he could. He just loved it, and yeah, it was a great moment at the council when Matthew enjoyed that paper. I will be making further comment at this, but I'll reserve that for the full council actually. We have Councillor Higgins with his hand up.
Yeah, no, I fully support it, and I am pleased about the direction about borrowing to invest, because I do think, and in terms of temporary accommodation investment, it will be backed by an asset, but we do have to make sure that we set the whole project up properly and that provides a return on the investment. There are too many councils who get pilloried for investing, and then as the media then turn out and say it doesn't return any money back to the council, and that's a political risk. So we have to make sure that there is a substantial, reasonable return to offset any risk of what we're doing, because that's how councils going into this can make a rod for their own back. I think I won't mention the council, but there has been one that's very recently which has caused a huge issue. But I do think the good thing about housing is you not only are you backing an asset which is very reasonable, and is you're actually helping someone as well. You're helping put a roof over their head. So it's not just about buying the latest car showroom, which I know some councils are, which I think, as Alan said, how long can you sell cars, those type of cars? I don't know. So yeah, and to you, Councillor DeVille, I think this is good, and we are just moving from one investment pot to something that's a bit different, but we will have more control over. And I think by getting a yield back, we can invest it back into services, which we discussed on the previous paper. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Higgins. No one else is indicating they want to speak. This occasion does require a proper vote, members, whereas the others were to note, but this does require a vote. So if we could please use our raised hand facilities, that would be great. I'm looking for my own. Councillor Higgins is okay. Councillor Pearson, second time he's used his raised hand. Well done, Alan. And Councillor Freer-Jones. That's all of us, I believe, have voted. Natasha, wherever. Oh, Councillor DeVille. Natasha, lost you at the bottom. Yep. Is that carried, Natasha?
Yes, it is. I haven't got Councillor DeVille's vote, but he did obviously proposed it. So there we go. Yeah, that's unanimous. That's everybody in favour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Moving on to the Melton Mowbray Open Spaces Strategy and Action Plan. This is a great paper, Jim, before you start. Love it. If I hand over to Jim Worley, the Assistant Director for Planning and Delivery, to summarise the report, please.
Yep, thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's been anticipated for a long time, hasn't it? The report seeks your agreement to adopt the Open Spaces Strategy and Action Plan. This following a period of consultation and considering the responses that we had. The strategy and action plan is focused on the delivery of the local plan. It's like the level of detail that sits below it, and in particular policy EN7, which is all about open space. And it opens the way for a more strategic and design-led approach to open spaces than we perhaps had in the past. If I can home straight in on to its key findings, is that we have the opportunity to reconsider how we use some of our open spaces and maybe convert some of them to semi-natural open spaces and allotments. Not everything has to be manicured, perfect grass, for example. It presents an approach to developer contributions to provide off-site solutions to open space in lieu of on-site provision. And if I'll pick that point up again, if I may, very shortly. It's recognised that there's potential for a large, publicly accessible, open space facility of some kind in the south of the town. Don't think we're talking about mirroring the country park on the north side of town, but something else that's valuable to residents. So really, I suppose it's inviting us to launch a fresh project to look into that more deeply, and indeed that might be the ultimate destination for the off-site contributions that I just referred to in the point before. And finally, for the large points, it provides a methodology for capital and revenue sums to make us more able to adopt open spaces. We're aware that some examples that haven't been adopted have proved to be problematic, and at its worst, we had to get involved anyway, even though it's strictly speaking not our business. So this is showing a pathway forward where we can take these things on more easily. And lastly, a bit of an appendix. There's some information provided in Appendix 3 for when we pick up the issues about cemetery provision. I think we all know our cemetery's not got an endless lifespan, and we need to look to grow it or find another location, and there's some helpful suggestions in there. If I can just make a couple of observations of my own, having worked in this arena from time to time over the years, it needs to be recognised this is really quite a significant change in direction on this topic. We've developed a tradition, nothing wrong with that, not unique to us, of pursuing open spaces in developments on a very formulaic basis. But this is sometimes given rise to small provision of limited usefulness. And this is the moment in time when we can turn away from that and try and have a more strategic approach to better facilities, bigger and better facilities on a more collegiate basis. Very important that other stakeholders recognise that this is a line in the sand and understand that things will be different in the future. And of course, our planning committee is probably the people that we need to head that list. And secondly, I think to allay some concerns, this doesn't mean that if open space isn't provided, new estates are just going to be rammed full of brickwork with no breathing space at all. Open space has a role, whether it's to protect a view or protect a feature, or simply to provide relief from the built form from a design point of view. And we'll still expect that, perhaps more than in the past, under the policy D1 and the forthcoming design SPD, which will be before you not too many months away. Even though the strict sort of provision of recreation may be found elsewhere through the off-site solutions. So just some reassurance there that we're not going to cram the place full of bricks and mortar in future developments. With that, I think I meant to turn to Councillor Higgins or the leader is to make the motion.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Jim. That was quite a detailed introduction. But I do invite Councillor Higgins, who is the portfolio holder for growth and regeneration, to move the recommendations at 2122 and 23 and provide any further introduction, please.
Yeah, I do move the recommendations on the paper, which is on page 66. And just to add on some of the reasons of the recommendations just beneath it, but I think one thing that has very much caught the imagination and response from the public, certainly in Melton Mowbray, was the current cemetery, and that as Jim said, it doesn't have an endless life, which I did like the pun there, Mr. Ward, but to be fair, it has had a lot of green flag awards, and there's been some significant investment over the last few months, and we changed the charges on the cemetery to accommodate that, and then potentially it may become a closed cemetery when it does become full. But we do need a new cemetery and and then get that design through. So that is a very important one to the great people of Melton Mowbray and the families of the deceased people who go there. Just to go on that, and I think as Mr. Worley said, this is a fundamental change of how MBC will look at open spaces in the future. I note that some councillors who worked on the local plan felt that a more strategic approach rather than parcelling up all these little pieces of land would be a better approach. It also makes managing the land a lot easier as well, if you have one particular big area where the focus is, rather than 10 little spots. But as Mr. Worley said, it doesn't compromise the design, and indeed the planning committee very recently refused an application in Melton Mowbray because the design didn't meet the test in terms of green space within that application area. Page 71, I'd like to draw members' attention to, and 417 and 419, and I think there you will see how particular space is then drawn up in some cost provision. So it starts to get where people can foresee what the value is then attached to these green spaces. Moving on to the appendix, which I think is fundamental, page 85. The third paragraph, which starts, the quantity and access findings have led some headline themes in the strategy, namely that there is a need for more allotment and community growing spaces. And then it goes on to talk about various other parts. I'd just like to bring in there is, and I know they are watching it now, but Councillor Pat Cumbers has been saying for many years that in the south of the town, she would like to see some kind of strategic green space, not necessarily the country park and not to compete with the country park, something a bit different, but so those who live in the south of the town can get access to somewhere to have recreation and value of that green space or walkthroughs. And also, and as Councillor Cumbers is on the viewing this as well, I know Councillor Cumbers a lot of the time does put a lot of reference, especially when on town applications, in how people can enjoy the outdoor space, which she recognises from her representation. So, Leader, I move those recommendations. Happy to take any questions, but I think Mr. Worley provided most of the answers already. Thank you.
Yeah, both good introductions. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to second the recommendations of 2122 and 23. I think it's important to notice the level of consultation that's taken place on this. I mean, it's a big document and it deserves the best consultation possible. But I'm just looking at the page 73. Press notices in the Melton Times, advertised on Radio Eye. Members were notified of the consultation. So all councillors, parish councils, developers, house builders, planning land agents, registered providers, Homes England, County Council, neighbouring councillors, Leicester City, Leicestershire County Council, and obviously all internal members of the staff as well. And then obviously available online and available on request. I remember the SurveyMonkey questionnaire was made available widely and advertised again through the press notice, radio announcement, and obviously through nowadays social media and online. 3 separate Zoom consultation meetings took place for the members, stakeholders and the general public. So it's been widely consulted on. I congratulate all the officers on that. Thank you very much for arranging that. Members, I lost you now and I go back. One moment. I'm back. Councillor Pearson has his hand up.
Just like to thank and congratulate Jim and Lee. This is one of the best documents I've seen in years of politics. It's fabulous. It's strategic. It's talking about and engaging people. You turn to page 146, you turn about Melton raised beds for people with disability, the benefit of wildflowers, amenities to open space, that we're not, as said before in the report, and Lee and Jim, we're not just having a square with a bit of grass on it and saying that's an open space. I think this is an absolutely fabulous document, and I'm very thrilled to be sitting here today that we've got a chance to approve it, and I'm very excited about this. Just again, congratulate everybody involved. It's brilliant.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearson. Councillor Frew-Jones.
I'll do my best. I'm not sure how good my signal is.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm pleased to see when it looks at the environmental and climate change implications that it makes reference to cycle routes. I've had some residents contact me recently about increasing cycle routes, especially during lockdown and the current climate. looking at creating like open spaces, semi-natural spaces, and positive impact on biodiversity, I find is really good. Can I ask a question? Does the open spaces take into account those patches of land that we've got in between housing estates?
Yeah. Councillor Higgins, did you catch that?
Yeah, so Alison, forgive me if I slightly didn't hear the cycle routes, but Pranali may come in on this, but we have secured funding for leisure provision, and we have been talking about cycle routes, mainly from the country park into the town, but there are other particular areas there. In terms of the spaces in the estates, I believe that is captured, but I'll hand that one over to Jim because there are some photos. I can't find the page now, but there are some photos of those kind of spaces you're talking about, of green spaces in between estates. I think on page 89 is one. So,
okay, Councillor Higgins, you have your hand. Oh, it's down now. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, you got me confused. Is that okay, Alison? Can you hear Alison?
Lee was just back to say.
Can someone help me what Alison said there? Is that okay? She's okay? No.
No, I think Councillor Watson, we lost connection then, so we didn't hear Councillor Freer-Jones' question or statement.
Did you hear that, Alison?
I don't hear me. If you hear me now, Lee said that Jim was about the resident patches. No.
I'm struggling to understand you. If someone can help me.
I think Alison's on about the resident patches, but Jim, do you want to just talk about that? And yeah, she's nodding, so we've got that one.
Okay. If I've caught it, certainly if I've caught it right, yeah. I think in two ways. So this reference to open spaces being capable of being semi-natural or some alternative use allotments, raised beds, as Councillor Pearson said. I think that's a reference to existing open spaces. They don't have to be rectangular mown grass all of the time. And looking to the future, or maybe avoiding creating such small patches at all, so that we can have something bigger and better through a combined approach, is what's being recommended.
Okay. I'd just like to say at the embryo of this, and I look to the Chief Executive at least for a nod of agreement or not, I think the embryo of this document was started 2.5 years ago at least. Ed and myself had a meeting with John Sutherland at Town Estate, and I think Andrew Cooper was with him as well, I think. And effectively, it's following that meeting and the post-mortem that Ed and I had on the best way to move forward on play areas. And it was remarked, and we found out following that meeting about Daventry, who have built a very large play area. I know Councillor Higgins is very well aware of this. And it has become quite a major attraction to Daventry, which is not too similar an area to us, other than the M1 goes straight through the middle of it and it's got loads of wind turbines. But other than that, it's not too dissimilar to us. And it really is a great addition to their economy. So just like those 2 points to be noted, but Councillor Higgins had moved the recommendations 212223. So if I could ask you all please to raise your hand electronically, if possible, please. We have Councillor Higgins, Councillor Pearson, Councillor Freer-Jones.
I can see, yep, all
yeah.
the bill, all members have raised their hands, so that's unanimously in favour of the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Natasha. If you could all lower your hands, please. We move on to the very last item on the agenda today, the Melton North Sustainable Neighbourhood Plan. If I could invite, please, Jim Worley, the Assistant Director for Planning and Delivery, to summarise the report.
Yes, and thank you, Leader, and apologies in advance. I do have some updating to provide, and it will take a short while. But I think, as you know from the report as it stands, it's seeking the approval of Cabinet to approve the master plan for that part of the North Sustainable Neighbourhood that it relates, that being the part on which there are not existing planning permissions. This is a bit like the last report, the next level of detail, in this case, in respect of policy SS5, which makes a master plan a requirement, and it's the fruition of a long journey that started even before the local plan was adopted. Obviously gone through the gears in more recent times. The plan itself was prepared by consultants in conjunction with ourselves and with the developers concerned, and it's intended to guide the future development of this area as and when planning applications come forward. Of course, you're familiar with this because it's the twin sister of the one that we dealt with in the South Sustainable Neighbourhood back in the summer. If approved, it would become a material consideration, and the planning committee would apply it, applying the weight that they would regard appropriate in the circumstances. But, and here's the update, it's really quite important. Since the report was published last week, we've received a letter from the Chief Executive of the County Council responding to the content of the report and the appendices, and indeed the master plan itself. The letter re-emphasises significant concerns that the County Council has, stating that the master plan doesn't accord with the local plan because it only covers part of the sustainable neighbourhood, and that it doesn't carry with it evidence about affordability and viability, which leads to questions of deliverability. It raises a range of more detailed concerns as well, based on the limited site coverage. The point is made several times, the extent of developer involvement or lack of in terms of those developers whose land it doesn't cover, and LCC with a hat on as infrastructure providers. It concludes by asking that the master plan is deferred from today's agenda to allow for fuller participation of LCC and other stakeholders that haven't been fully involved in the work to date. So we've discussed these various points raised between ourselves and those developers that have been involved. And whilst not agreeing with all of the points raised necessarily, you can see that some points in Appendix B we don't see eye to eye on a number of matters. But what we do agree is that more engagement from all partners is always desirable. Indeed, this is something we've sought to achieve when this work started in 2019 and even years before that, and repeatedly do on all the major projects of this nature. But it has to be said, it's not always been reciprocated. The situation's been challenging for this project, but having been offered the opportunity for engagement with the County Council, we would very much like to take that opportunity and work collaboratively, as indeed we are now doing on the South again after a period of being apart. So in that context, I'd like to adjust the recommendation, please, and ask that this item is deferred to a future Cabinet meeting to allow that deeper collaboration and engagement, and present back to you the outcomes as and when the process has run its course. If I can just add a comment that whilst deferring the master plan from today's agenda would allow the County Council to play a greater role in the master plan, obviously there's going to be a delay to that, and subsequent changes would need to be agreed, run through the process, and because there's multiple parties involved, we'll be seeking consensus on all of those. Quite how long, it's hard to say. To my mind, it's a direct reflection of how profound the changes might be, and obviously there's a spectrum in my imagination there, from very small tweaks which could be quick to rather more deep and meaningful changes which could take some time. So we're seeking authority to proceed on that basis. We will try to do it as soon as possible, but it's hard to pin down a date. I would suggest that January is the earliest possible, but I guess we have to follow our nose at this point and see how long the changes take to secure. if they're to be significant in particular. And as obviously this engages some additional work. I think the consultants who produced this thought they'd finished their task, but we'll be going back to them asking for more. And obviously we'll have to work with the county council and the other partners engaged to see how those costs are covered. There may well be some heading in our direction, it has to be said. Just a footnote about the other parcel of land that hasn't been included in this master plan, but isn't the county council's. We tend to refer to it as the Richborough land because they were the planning applicants, although they've sold that land now and Bloor Homes are pursuing it. They've said to us that they're very happy with how we have conducted this master plan to date. They understand the logic and they have no desire to be involved in future master planning because they're so far down the line. They've got an outline planning permission. As I mentioned, they've sold their land to Bloor Homes, and indeed Bloor Homes have now submitted full designs to us in the form of reserve matters. So they're really much more advanced than all of the other players in the area. So obviously we'll need to work out how we relate to the Richborough land as we work our way forward with the county council. So to summarise, we do believe that the master plan represents a sound and appropriate way forward, and indeed the comments that we make can be substantiated. But as is always the case, it would have been vastly preferable for deep engagement with all stakeholders. And given the recent discussions on the south that we're pursuing in earnest, we'd very much like to try and emulate that, and we're seeking basically authority for more time to conduct that engagement and have a more collaborative and hopefully consensus approach at the end of it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. I do understand it has been a huge, massive challenge to get the work done on this master plan, and it has not been a smooth ride, including the inevitable impact arising from the pandemic. And I applaud you and your team for all, including the developers and consultants who have worked hard in getting us to where we are today. And I recognise it has taken us a long time to make progress. This work is a key part of our local plan and is linked to the work also taking place in the south. I am aware our officer team is now working collaboratively with the county council in the south, and I fully agree that we should seek to replicate this approach for the Northern Master Plan, and all sides must commit to making this happen. I understand the pressure on time from the developer's point of view, and I fully sympathise with them for their desire to get on with the developments. This is exactly what we need, but I also recognise that construction of the MMDR is key for development of all these sites, north and south, and indeed elsewhere in the town, and the work we are doing with the county council cannot be underestimated. I note that you have received a positive response and support from the developers outside the planned boundary, which is again a testimony to the work your team has done with the private sector. Without further ado, I do accept your recommendation for deferral, hopefully only until the January meeting to conclude this exercise. This will give us time to engage further with the county council and also consider suggestions from ward councillors such as Margaret Glancy regarding a buffer zone around the country park. I would therefore like to propose that the item be deferred, and I do look for a seconder. Councillor Higgins seconds. Councillor Pearson, you have your hand up. Is that by mistake? I don't think you want to speak, do you? No, you don't. Does anybody got anything to add to that, or can we move to the vote for deferral, please, as moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Higgins? If I could ask you please to use the raise hand function. We have Councillor Pearson, Freer-Jones, Higgins and Ronnie de Burgh. Natasha, if I could ask you to confirm that, please.
Yep, that's unanimously in favour of the deferral.
Okay, well, thank you very much. As far as I'm aware, that brings us to the close of this meeting, other than one very big item that has to be mentioned, and that is it's Adele's last meeting, I believe, as the Governance and Regulatory Services Director for the Cabinet. Adele, it's really sad that we're losing you. This is your last meeting with us. Really sad, but obviously massively excited for you and your family for the future, and we wish you well. Never ever forget, Melton. You've done us proud. You got the Constitution right. I remember you 2 years ago. You said you just love constitutions. I'm going to write it all, yeah, and you did. So just a massive thank you from all of us, and best of luck for the future. Like I say, for the family and yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, members, thank you very much. Best of luck and take care. Stay safe. Those coronavirus figures have gone up massively again today, I'm afraid. So take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.